You hear a lot. They say a dog is a man's best friend. Quite often this is true. However, in recent time, it turns out that owning pets seems to be more like a bad luck charm. A news magazine called Recession Leads to Fewer Pet Adoptions points out that the recession has also impacted the lives of pets. With the U.S. economy in the pits of recession, many individuals have tightened up their budgets to the point of even sacrificing pet ownership. Their reason for making such tough decisions is to survive the recession by prioritizing necessities over accessories. In their case, pets have become an accessory. By considering the expenses that follows along with owning a pet, we can come to an understanding to why owners have given up their pets due to the recession. The responsibilities of raising an animal are no joke. It would take almost as much time and effort as it would to raise a child. Not to mention that with timeless hours spent on grooming and washing, the amount of money spent on raising a pet takes a pretty big chunk out of your paycheck. That money would help immensely with the monthly bills. A recent survey by Brack Consulting tells us about the compensations pet owner must do in order to survive the battle with the recession. From the 1,500 pet owners they polled, about 46% of them claimed that their financial situation was worse in 2008 than in 2007, and as a result, they were scaling back on pet care. The surveyors also mentioned that among the most expensive pet services are the boarding, grooming services, dental care, and other veterinary care. When all these expenses come together and pile up, it could become quite problematic, which is why 2% of the surveyed owner had given up their pets due to economic reasons. Some animals are very fortunate. Compared to the many people in the third world countries, these pets have a much better life. Unlike the everyday struggles a man have to endure to acquire food to feed his family in poor countries, the pet here in the United States do not have to work for food. Food comes freely to pets with no strings attached. In fact, the average pet owner spends about $695 annually to feed a medium-sized dog. This is just for a single medium-sized dog, but the price jumps up almost $200 to $875 for a bigger dog. However, many Americans often raise more than one pet. On average, about 37.2% of households own dogs, each of which owns on average 1.7 dogs. This leads us to say that raising multiple pets can cost up to at least $1,000 for the food. However, this is only the beginning of how much money is needed to raise a pet. Constantly in the minds of all people who want a pet is that they want their pet to obey them. It would be wonderful to have such a pet. However, getting a well-trained pet may not be a priority for most people in today's haywire economy. Training pets will take time, but more importantly, it requires money. The typical dog cost ranges from $40 to $2,500 depending on the type of class training desired. There are 3 classes in which dogs undergo training: group classes, private classes, and obedience boarding school. Of these, group classes are the cheapest, ranging from $40 to $125 or more for 4 to 8 weekly 1-hour sessions. The private class, which includes lessons taught by the trainer, usually costs between $30 to $100 per hour long sessions, so about $240 to $600 for 6 sessions. The most expensive class is the obedience boarding school, which usually costs from $950 to $2,500 or more for 2 to 4 weeks of board and train. It includes a one-on-one training conducted by the trainer at the trainer's home or at a boarding kennel. Compare these expenses to the average American's monthly income, and we get a general understanding of the declining animal adoption rate in America. The expenses for obedience boarding school cost as much as all monthly bills combined together already. Just as how people get sick and needs to see the doctor, animals get sick too. Annual visits to the vet are a major recommendations by a veterinarian. However, the cost for visiting the vet each time could become a financial drag sometimes. The average veterinary visit per household accumulates up to 2.6 times a year only. However, it is calculated that it would cost owners $356 on average each year for veterinary expenditure. It may not be much considering if only spent once a year, but the scales differ greatly compared to a month. Since the pet visit the veterinary about 2.6 times a year, It must mean that each veterinary visit is done probably once every 6 months, costing about $137. In that 1 month where the vet sees the pet, the expenses for the visit would consume the amount of money that could be used towards other things, such as a family monthly phone plan. These are just a few of the many expenses that pet owners must consider when it comes to raising pets. The cost that comes with raising a pet is difficult to manage, especially during this economic crisis. With other important bills such as mortgage, electricity, water, phone, etc., constantly in the minds of owners, the best way to prepare for the worst is to live off the necessities of life. The economic situation has taken as much toll as it can on owners, and we see it clearly. More and more abandoned pets are on the rise as pet owners try to compensate for their debts.